Welcome to my course where I teach you how to draw in bite-sized lessons. If you want to get to the start of the course, I'm going to leave a link up here for you. Today, I'm going to show you how to create perfect shadings. There are 6 different methods. Let's get into it. So the idea with shading is to go from one tonal value to another gradually. So the first way of doing that is to vary the distance between your strokes, like this. You start off really close to each other, and then as you want to go lighter and lighter, you just gradually increase the distance between your strokes, so that here, when there's no distance between your strokes, there's very little or none of the paper shining through. Then as you vary the distance, more and more of the paper shines through, and that gives you a lighter tonal value. The next way to create a shading is to layer your pencil. So if I add one single layer with the same pressure, I'm going to get one tonal value. But as I go over that and I add more layers over an area, I'm going to gradually get less and less of the paper shining through, and I'm gradually going to get a darker tonal value. And that way we get a shading from dark through to light. The next way is to use different grades of pencil. If you want a lighter tonal value, then you're going to use a harder pencil, for example, a 2 or a 4H. Then as you want to go darker, you gradually start using softer and softer pencils, like an HB, B, or a 2B. And to get the really darks, you're going to go to a 6 or an 8B. Next up is to vary the pressure that you're applying to the pencil. If you press hard, you get a dark tonal value. The lighter you press, the lighter the tonal value, because less and less of the graphite is now adhering to the paper. So usually as you draw, you're going to have a combination of all these different techniques. You're varying the distances between your strokes, you're adding more layers, you're using different pencils, and you're varying the pressure that you're applying onto the paper. And all these techniques that we've shown you here now are great for general work and smaller areas. When you want to go over to larger areas, that's when you need to start using your graphite paper. So just as a reminder, the graphite paper is just a standard piece of paper which you've taken a 6 or an 8B and you fill this paper up with graphite to form essentially a sheet of graphite paper. Then you can either take your cloth or a makeup sponge and you can pick up some of this graphite and then you can apply that to the paper. So as you can see, this is going to work great for larger areas. And as before, you can add multiple layers. You always start off in the darker area and then gradually work your way to the lighter areas. And you can add as many layers as you want. And that works fabulous for light to mid-tone tonal values. When you want to go darker, then you have to resort to graphite dust. So let's put some graphite dust down over there. And let's use the sponge. So you tap your sponge inside the graphite dust. And as before, you're starting in the darkest area. And then you gradually work your way lighter. So as you go out towards the lighter area, you've got less and less graphite left on the sponge. And as before, you can also vary the pressure that you're applying on the sponge to get lighter tonal values. And by layering more, you get darker tonal values. Just like that. Awesome. So now I want to show you how to create perfectly smooth shadings. I'm sure you'll agree, if you look at these guys over here that we did with a pencil, and even here with the cloth and the sponge, they're not perfectly smooth. Sometimes you do want to create a nice perfectly smooth shading. So let's put a new sheet of paper down here and let's just do a basic shading. So I'm going to start dark, pressing hard. I'm gradually going to go lighter by laying off on the pressure and adding less layers. Now I'm going to go over to a harder pencil, gradually pressing softer and softer and softer. And then I'm going to go to an even harder pencil. So now it's a light pressure. I'm pressing even lighter until eventually I'm barely touching the paper. So we've got ourselves a fair shading going on there, right? But now we want to get this beautifully smooth. So the first thing you can do is use your blending stump. So what I've done here is I've taken my blending stump and I've given him a nice flat point, and then I've pressed that point to give me a flat tip like that. So now using just little small circular motions, you can go over this. Always start in the dark and gradually work your way down to the lighter areas. So what's happening is it's picking up some of the loose graphite that's on the paper, and now you're just smudging that around. So that's going to make him even smoother, but you're never going to get perfect. So then I'll go over to a finer tip blending stump. And now I'm going to start a technique called polishing. So what you're going to do is you're going to look for little lighter areas within that tonal value that you're working in. For example, can you see there's a little lighter dot over there? So now I'm going to take the tip and I'm just going to go over that area. So what's happening is it's taking some of the darker tonal values around it and it's pushing it into that area over there. And you can now see by doing this polishing, I'm evening out the tonal value in that one particular area. And because you're using the blending stump, you're not adding any more tonal value. There's no extra graphite going down on the paper. So all you're doing is you're just moving all the tonal values that are already there. You're just moving them around and essentially evening out the layer of tonal value that's in that area over there. After that, if it's still not smooth enough, or you've got areas like on this edge over here, maybe you want that to be a nice straight edge, then what you do is you take whatever tonal value is here, you take the next lighter pencil. For example, here I would have used this pencil to draw over here. So now I'm going to use my medium pencil. And I'm going to come in here and do the same polishing in those little gaps, and that just with no pressure whatsoever, and that's now just evening out that tonal value over there even further. Right, now I'm getting to the middle tone area, so now I'm going over to my lighter pencil and I'm going to do my polishing with a lighter pencil over here. So that way you're not darkening up the area, but you're just filling up the paper that's still shining through in between those areas with a darker tonal value, and that evens it out. Your eye can't spot the difference. Your eye sees it all as one. And then right at the end you can come back in with your flat blending stump and just give everything a last little smooth off. That's how you get nice, beautiful, smooth shadings. So now I'm going to show you when you would use these different techniques. You would use the technique where you're adding spaces between the lines in a drawing like this, when you've got a rough area that you need to still maintain texture, but you need to create different shadings. So then you're going to vary those distances between the lines. Next up, you have the layering technique, where you're layering one layer of graphite over the next, and that's just for general shadings like this, but smoother shadings. Using different grades of pencil works beautifully for something like this, when you want to go from gradually from one tonal value over the next, over a larger distance. And the same goes for varying your pressure on the pencil. For example, in an area like this, you can easily just use a mid-tone pencil. Press super light over here and then gradually press harder and harder, and then just for those darker corners you go to a even softer pencil like this guy. Then using your cloth and the graphite paper would work nice for large areas like this, where you need to just do some basic shadings but not really dark. Then you can quickly fill in this whole face super fast, and then you come back in with your pencils and you adjust all those little tonal values and get them more accurate. For the darker tonal values, using the sponge and the graphite dust, there's your perfect drawing for it, because now you've got darker tonal values overall. So the sponge and the graphite dust is always going to give you that darker tonal value. So the next technique we need to cover is how to draw negatively. I'm going to leave a link to that over here for you, as well as a link to my website where you'll find hundreds of other draw and paint along lessons. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next class.